Hi all, electrical engineer, Igor Ekimov, is with you. Today we will look at the modern soldering iron KETS02 from KAIWEETS. This is a complete analog of the FNIRSI HS-1 soldering iron. This is one of the best Chinese soldering irons. The soldering iron can be connected both to the vehicle's onboard network and to a 220-volt network via a power source. Let's see what it can do and how to use it. Personally, I am captivated by its small size, comfortable handle, quick heating, and intelligent temperature control of the soldering iron tip. Plus, there is a cover that can be used to cover a soldering iron that has not completely cooled down, and put it in a bag with the tool. It will also protect the soldering iron tip from mechanical damage. I left a link to the soldering iron in the description. If you are interested in videos on electrics and tips for the home handyman, then subscribe to the channel and press the bell. Special thanks for your likes and reposts. I will review a complete set of soldering iron, and you can choose which configuration you need specifically. First, let's look at the simplest configuration. The soldering iron comes in this packaging. The packaging is strong and well preserved during shipping. It looks good, so you can use the soldering iron as a gift. Its characteristics are indicated on the back. Its model is KAIWEETS-02. Soldering iron power 65 watt when using a PD power supply. Used to supply Type C power. OLED screen, which provides high contrast. Temperature adjustment from 80 to 420 degrees. Uses voltage from 9 to 20 volts. The power supply of the soldering iron is controlled using the PD protocol. There is a birdie here that the soldering iron comes with one tip. Here we show how to install this tip in a soldering iron. I left a link to the page with a full description of the characteristics of the soldering iron in the description. Let's open the box. At the top there are fairly detailed instructions in several languages. But there is no Russian language here. I think after this video you will understand how to use this soldering iron. Here is the soldering iron itself. That's the sting. It is not inserted into it. We take out the soldering iron. Unscrew the nut. Insert the tip all the way. Tighten the nut. The tip holds tightly in the soldering iron. The soldering iron comes with a tip with this sharpening. If desired, you can install a tip with a different sharpening. Such tips are included in the extended package of the soldering iron. We'll talk about them later. The body is made of aluminum alloy, which makes it quite strong and durable. The soldering iron fits quite well in the hand. This protrusion prevents your hand from sliding towards the soldering iron tip and causing you to get burned. There are flat parts on this ledge. They also allow you to comfortably hold the soldering iron in your hand and better feel the orientation of the soldering iron tip. If we put the soldering iron on a flat table, then because of them the soldering iron does not roll off. The soldering iron has convenient buttons that can be used while soldering with one hand. Cover the soldering iron tip with a lid. Insert and turn 90 degrees. This is what the soldering iron looks like in transport form. The lid holds tightly. Let's see what else is included in the basic package. Remove the soldering iron holder. Just below is an envelope. We take it out, and let's see what's inside. Here is a cord for connecting a soldering iron to the Type C port. The cord is 1.2 meters long. It's quite flexible. There are plugs at the ends to prevent foreign objects from getting into the connectors during storage. There is a strap that holds the cord rolled up. And there is this soldering iron stand with a sponge inside that you can use to clean the soldering iron tip. This is all that is included in the basic package. Let's now look at what is included in the extended package of the soldering iron. This PD/QC power supply is included in the extended package of the soldering iron. It allows you to output power up to 65 watts. This is perhaps the smallest power supply for such power. The charging voltage can vary from 5 to 20 volts depending on the power required to power the soldering iron. The wire inside has a data bus that allows the soldering iron to request the supply voltage it needs. The same power supply can also be used to charge smartphones. This charger has a USB output and a Type-C output. But if you connect from USB, the power supply produces less power. Here we can look at the characteristics of the power supply. Above are the characteristics of the power supply when using the Type-C port, then the characteristics when using only the USB power port, and then when using both ports at once. To power the soldering iron, you can use a simpler power supply, but you need to set the voltage of this source in the soldering iron settings. I will show you how this is done later. If your soldering iron restarts from an external source, this means that there is not enough power for the soldering iron and the power source needs to be replaced. You can see the current characteristics of the soldering iron at different supply voltages in the table. The tip, which is included in the standard kit, is a small beveled cone. They are convenient for soldering small parts and microcircuits. But to expand the capabilities of the soldering iron, I recommend ordering a soldering iron with additional tips. They come packaged like this. Here is such a large beveled sting. Here is a smaller beveled sting. And this is a beveled cone, and it is larger than in the standard kit. And these are two small cones, differing in size. The peculiarity of such tips is that they do not need to be constantly sharpened, like conventional soldering irons with copper tips. You can clean the tip with a special napkin, which is included in the soldering iron stand. Another feature of the tips is that the ceramic heating element is located inside the tips. It is enough to apply voltage to these two contacts, and the tips will heat up. Let's measure the resistance of the heating element. It is 6.3 ohms. Since the heating element has a certain resistance, then, according to Ohm's law, the lower the input voltage to the soldering iron, the less power the soldering iron can produce. For example, if you power it from the car's onboard network at 12 volts, it will be able to produce 24 watts of power, and the tip will heat up in 17 seconds. And at a voltage of 20 volts, the soldering iron will output 65 watts, and the tip will heat up in 8 seconds. When soldering, do not use flux containing a lot of chlorine or acid to avoid corrosion of the surface of the tips. Then you will have to change the entire tip or restore it. Why do you need such a fancy soldering iron when there are many soldering irons on the market that are much cheaper? During my work, I have accumulated a whole collection of different soldering irons. I already showed it in another video. I'll give the link in the description. In almost all cases where my previous soldering irons were used, you can use one such KAIWEETS soldering iron. In a car, you can connect this soldering iron to the onboard network directly, and indoors through a power supply. Intelligent control of the temperature of the soldering iron tip, its small size and weight, create convenience in its operation. And old soldering irons can be used for soldering with active fluxes. The stings from them cost pennies, and if they burn out from such fluxes, it's not a pity. What are the advantages of modern soldering irons, in particular this soldering iron from KAIWEETS? The tip is a single block of a ceramic heating element and the tip itself, which is used for soldering. Heat from the heating element easily reaches the soldering site, and there is no loss of power. Therefore, the soldering iron can use its full power, and can be used in most soldering jobs. Plus, the soldering iron uses a PID controller to set the temperature. This allows you to quickly and accurately set the tip temperature. For example, you are soldering something with a high heat capacity, the same extension cord contact. With a regular soldering iron, it would take a long time to warm up the soldering area. The PID controller will immediately turn on the soldering iron at maximum power, in order to heat the soldering area as quickly as possible to the required temperature. And it will also quickly remove excess power when soldering is finished, so that the soldering iron does not overheat. Such tips do not oxidize and do not need to be constantly sharpened. They have a long service life if you do not use active fluxes. Let's connect the soldering iron to the power supply. If you have not inserted the tip into the soldering iron or it is faulty, you will be prompted to insert a new tip. We insert a new tip and turn on the soldering iron again. The soldering iron is immediately in standby mode. To exit it, press the left key. Our soldering iron immediately began to heat up. We can adjust the temperature using the left and right buttons. We can also hold the keys for a long time. For POS61 solder, I usually set it to 300 degrees. Here our display shows the supply voltage, the set temperature and the actual temperature of the tip. I hope you noticed how quickly this temperature was set. The soldering iron has a position sensor, and if it is not used for a while, it goes into sleep mode. This transition time can be adjusted, as well as the temperature of the soldering iron in sleep mode. In order to return the soldering iron to standby mode, hold down the right button. The soldering iron will automatically turn off if it is not used for 30 minutes. It can be turned off earlier, just unplug it from the power supply. By pressing both keys simultaneously, we go to the menu. Using the left and right keys we select a menu item. Now we will adjust the screen brightness. Hold down the right button. Using the left and right keys we can adjust the brightness. To exit the mode, either wait or hold the left button for a long time. We can calibrate the soldering iron from -50 to +50 degrees. We can display the temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Here we regulate the time of transition to sleep. The time here is 20 minutes. We can reduce it or increase it. Please note that adjustments are made with small pressures. To exit the mode, long press the left button. Here we adjust the temperature of the soldering iron in sleep mode. Here we can childproof the soldering iron. Turned on, turned off. Here we can flip the screen. So we turned the screen over. Please note that the left and right buttons have also swapped places. Here we have returned the screen for right-hand soldering. Here we can adjust the supply voltage. As you can see, you can set 9, 12, 15 and 20 volts. We leave 20 volts and return to adjusting the screen brightness. Exit by holding the left key. This is how a modern soldering iron works, which will be a good helper for those who often have to solder. If you have any questions, write in the comments. I would also be grateful if you share your experience in operating such soldering irons. Share the video with those who may find this soldering iron and information from the video useful. Subscribe to the channel and press the bell so you don't miss new videos. Like, and see you in new and old videos.